You ready to get her done?
Get her done.
Well, our friends just left. Sad to see them go, but it was a really great visit, and now we are shifting into like really get the kitchen done. We started on working things, we're gathering the materials, started pulling things out, but wanted to keep it functional enough to be able to feed everybody this weekend. And now it is time. So I'm taking the kids to my mom's today and dropping them off. They're gonna hang out with my mom and spend the night. And Maya is gonna whip this sucker into shape, right?
Well, it's gonna look like a train wreck first.
That's okay. All the best things look like train wrecks first, right? So basically, I'm trying to kind of clear the kids out and take the pressure off of this space and being in it. And we're just gonna try to stay out of the way as much as possible, because the idea is we want to get the kitchen functional as quickly as possible, because we have the harvest coming in and it's going to start coming in really heavy, about 3 or 4 weeks. And so we just want to be able to have maybe not a fully finished space by then, but at least a functional space by then. That's a lot of eggs.
That's not even counting today's.
We're gonna go out on the farm a little bit, check some things out. I'm playing with a new camera, if you can't tell. I'm gonna get it figured out. My camera broke. I love getting cameras. I love camera equipment. I was a photographer for 10 years before I was a YouTuber, and so it's like totally new toys. It's how Jeremiah is when he gets new tools. So I was showing the other day several of the things that have come up here recently in the garden tour I showed you guys. Let's go over here. Squash here coming up. And here I've got corn coming up, and back here are black-eyed peas. What is crazy is you guys are seeing videos right now that are filmed either the day of or the day before. So when you're like, whoa, didn't you just sow that like 3 days ago? Yes, I did. Like, things are germinating so quickly right now. And it's just a mixture of the fact that we're still getting rain pretty regularly, the ground's staying pretty moist, and then it's hot. We're averaging highs in the 90s now, and it'll be like that. I mean, like through the summer, we'll probably stay in the 90s for a little bit longer, and we'll start breaking 100 degrees daily a little bit later in the summer. So it stays really hot, and this is like explosive growth time. Things germinate fast, they grow fast, they fruit fast. If you cannot melt and have a heat stroke, Arkansas is a fantastic place to grow a garden. Usually by this point the garden is definitely fuller. We did get a little later start with those late freezes. I think probably in a month you probably won't be able to tell the difference because of how fast things will grow. And even now, like, it's kind of getting to that leap stage where it's different every day. This gourd, for instance, look at it trying to climb the sunflower. I'm actually going to redirect this because I don't want it to give the sunflower difficulty in growing. So we're just going to make this little guy let go. With things like gourds and squash, melons, cucumbers, they readily climb trellises, but sometimes you just have to do a little bit of redirection. Like here's another bit here that's trying to climb up this sunflower. And when you get to the time of year where things are growing really fast, they can just go off in the other direction really quickly. It is really fun to get to show you guys things and how they grow, like as quick as they grow. For instance, like here's a little, I think this is a silver slicer, a little white cucumber. I'll have to double check. I'm fairly certain that that's what this is. Just look how tiny this is. And I'm just going to keep you guys updated on some of these things and how quickly they're growing, because it's really astounding how fast things can grow when you get to this point. Unfortunately, the weeds grow just as quickly, so it makes for a little more work. Once everything gets really big, the weeds aren't as bad because the ground is more shaded. Hey, snacks. Aren't these gorgeous in this Greenstalk? I really like growing strawberries in here where they just hang off the edges. I think it's so cool looking. It's also really nice to have strawberries that don't have bugs in them. I think I probably could have used some preventative measures in my kiddie pool to be able to save more of my strawberries, but we still ate a ton of them in the kiddie pool. I still think that's a good way to grow them. Greenstalk definitely has produced more uniform and cleaner fruits because they're hanging off the side. Birds are singing today. So I have a little mockingbird up here that has a nest in the rose arbor. They yell at us sometimes while we're out here, but they haven't been super aggressive. They get irritated by us, but they haven't tried to like hurt us or anything. And I have a little family of bluebirds in this birdhouse. They have a nest in there and they're sweet. They come to sit right here and chirp at us. Got some little cosmos coming up here, and I threw some zinnias and sunflowers and just some really bright and cheery annuals out in this space to kind of fill these beds up. And they're starting to come up. That's exciting. Oh, I threw some holy basils in here too. I wasn't sure what that was. Oh, it smells so good. These zinnias are getting ready to open up. These will fill out so much and reseed. It'll be wonderful. It's really funny because you wouldn't think this, but the high tunnel is actually kind of like a refuge from the heat of the day. I really didn't think it was going to be this way whenever we first set this up. And when it's too hot and sunny to work outside, I can come in here and work comfortably because the ventilation is so good in here, and then the shade cloth, it really is like being in the shade, which is nice. It really actually opens up more time of the day for gardening, because otherwise I have to get it done early in the morning or in the evenings because I'm very fair. I can't be outside in the afternoon. I get sunburns really bad, so I just don't stay out when it's really bright out. 6 days ago we spent hours. Our friends came over, Nate and Jill, and we spent literal hours working on tomatoes, pruning them, weeding around them, and tying them up. And now, 6 days later, I come out here and I'm seeing so many suckers, so many plants laid over. I typically do all of that just in like once a week, and there gets to be a time where it could probably handle to be done twice a week or there, where it's just growing really fast. But I can also manage to do it once a week. It just takes longer when I do it, and that's what works for me. If you don't have as many tomato plants, if you stay on top of pruning, it can be like a 10-minute a day job. And I could do that. I could come and address them a little while every day. Probably, I guess, no, it's only been 5 days. So yeah, tomorrow I'll actually probably come out here on the 6th day and tie up plants and prune them and just do a lot of work. I shared a little bit the other day about some curling that was going on in my tomato plants. Like here you can still see a little bit, like this branch is curled real bad, and many of you actually linked that it could also have been what happened with my peppers, because I had a lot of peppers die when I first transplanted them. A lot of you actually shared with me, because the night before Danny from Deep South Homestead had shared that he was having a similar problem, and he had linked it back to some herbicide contamination in his compost because the hay that the animals were eating. And I do not think there's herbicide contamination in my straw, because I used the same straw provider for the entire garden and nowhere else is doing this, just here in this greenhouse. But we did get a new load of compost to fill the beds in this greenhouse, and this is the only area on the farm that compost was used. So it makes me feel like that's probably very likely what happened, was that this is a response to herbicides that were existing in that compost, either because the compost was developed from broken down plants that we bought it, so I don't know what it is, if it's broken down plants or if it had some manure in it from animals that could have potentially eaten something like that. I don't know which one it is. As the plants get bigger, they grow out of it, so I'm not super stressed about it. It'll be okay. But it is very important whenever you're sourcing stuff to ask questions. I will still buy from the place that we bought this from because it is my best option that I have around here, and sometimes you just got to come down to that. But if you're ever going to put like straw or hay mulch on your garden, it's really good to ask your source if it's been sprayed with anything, because if they spray it with something that kills broadleaf plants, it allows grasses to grow, but it kills things like tomato plants and nightshades. Oh, check this out. Here is a little baby tomato fruit, and I want to show you this one right here. It's kind of growing upside down, but can you see that slight purplish blush on this? This is a black beauty, so that's kind of cool. They get their anthocyanins early, so they start looking purple early, but they don't actually ripen until much later. Can't believe how fast these are growing. These little overachievers. I actually pick the fruits on early plants. This plant is 4 inches tall, 3 inches tall. It does not need to be trying to grow peppers, so we're not gonna do that. But these look really good. I'm thinking they're gonna do very well. They're getting very established. So here's a plant. I've actually showed you guys this because this is probably one of the most intense fasciated blossoms I've ever seen, and it's actually, you can see there, it started to set its fruit. It's going to be a monster tomato. Might be largely inedible, but I'm going to let it grow just to see. But this cluster of blossoms is huge, and actually an unfortunate thing happened with this plant. My dear precious son put this trellis up. They accidentally decapitated this plant. It's a hard job. They did pretty well at keeping them okay. It could have happened to anybody, but the plant did not. It got topped. So I had already pruned off any suckers. Normally if you accidentally top a plant, see, it has no leader. So you can see these others are like already a foot taller than it because it has nowhere to grow up. And I'd already pruned the suckers. And I decided to just wait and see to leave it because it already had so many blossoms. I'll still at least get some tomatoes off of it. But down here off the bottom, it's actually sending off a shoot. So I'm just going to let that grow, and it eventually will grow taller than this little branch, and it'll grow up as the main leader of the plant. If you ever accidentally top a plant, you can let a sucker grow and become the main leader. If you've got blossoms, you can just leave the plant, because I'm still going to get this many tomatoes off of it, even if it never sent off a side shoot, but it did. I got those jalapenos. Looking good. I'm feeling so good about peppers. You know, I do these little walks with you guys throughout the week. Well, of course, we have garden tours also. I share my excitement about what's going on here with you so that you can tap into that and you can carry that into your own garden. We're gonna prune and talk. Tomorrow, Jessica will thank today, Jessica, for knocking some of this out. Inspiration is really not to be undervalued. Inspiration is so important. Whenever you're doing a job that's hard and you kind of have to overcome what you may feel like doing in the moment. Like when it's hot outside and I have a task that I know is going to physically push me, I'm going to be hot, I'm going to be doing a lot of bending over or squatting, and I know my muscles are going to hurt. It's easy to be like, you don't always want to do it in that moment, but whenever you tap into the love and the passion of the garden, it makes, like, that outweighs the discomfort. It outweighs the drudgery. It outweighs the monotony. And you go, oh, I love this. I want to do that. Don't undervalue that. Finding places that make you want to get out in your garden, that's a really valuable thing. Because truly, some of you may be really blessed and fortunate to have friends who are gardeners, and being able to share what's going on with your garden with them kind of taps into that inspiration and really grows that love for the garden. But for a lot of people, you don't. I mean, for a long time, I didn't have anybody in my life that I dealt with on a regular basis that cared very much at all about the garden. My mom's always loved to garden, but like none of my peers and my friends were gardeners for a long time. Now, I have a lot of people who I can invite them over and we can walk through the garden and get excited about it, and it makes me want to work on it, or I can go see their gardens and it just makes me really eager to get in mine. And I have a lot of friends making content on YouTube that I can watch and get kind of like pumped up to work in my garden. But if you don't have that in your direct life, finding a source for it, like online, it really is valuable. And one thing that I've really learned, honestly, based on feedback from you guys since sharing on YouTube, is that inspiration breeds motivation. And whenever you don't feel motivated to do the hard work of something, taking a minute to stir yourself into inspiration and whatever source you know works for you it's a good tool to have. I've noticed that, like, when I don't feel like cooking, I can sit down and I can read cookbooks, and in just 10 minutes of reading cookbooks, a lot of times I'm inspired to go get in the kitchen and create something. And a lot of these videos, whenever I just bring you guys with me and weed the garden and pull tomato suckers and talk to you about what I'm excited about, I'm wanting to share inspiration with you so that when you're listening to this, that to-do list in your garden is no longer feeling like a chore at quite so much, but more like a pleasure and more like something you're like, oh yeah, I totally love this. If you are new here and you're wondering what I'm talking about in pruning suckers, I do have a video about pruning tomato plants and how I do that, as well as how to propagate suckers. Here's another plant that got topped. This one actually might not do anything at all because I don't know that it has any space. I'm gonna leave it and just see. Oh well, sad day. So whatever it is that inspires you, I encourage you to like figure that out for yourself. It might not be my channel. It might be looking at some magazines. It might be watching other channels. It might be Pinterest. It might be just, there are lots of places that you can get gardening inspiration. Watching garden tours and just plugging into that. Do you know that like sometimes I started doing garden tours for myself, in the spring when I was aching for the garden, and whenever all of the hard work came, to be able to look back on what we had accomplished in years past, because I do understand that I'm the kind of person that sometimes I need some inspiration to tap into motivation. And my own garden tours started as that tool for myself. I take photos of the garden yearly as a tool for myself, because whenever it comes down to, okay, I got to push myself, I mean, it gets easier over time. The amount of work that I'm capable of doing now is way more than I was capable of doing, 6 years ago. This is another reason why I talk about growing things that interest you, because when you start getting into these 90 to 100 degree days, and if you live in a place that is like that, or even if you don't, if you start getting into the days that are really hot and really demanding, and you're gonna have to push yourself, and then you go in the grocery store and they have like what you're growing in your garden for 97 cents a pound in the grocery store, or 67 cents a pound, whatever it is, on sale because it's in season, and you're like, this stinks. That's actually when I started growing things that they don't sell at the grocery store. I was like, this is bad for me. Like, just growing plain old food because I was buying started plants. I wasn't starting from seed, and so I was just limited to the options. And 10 years ago, they did not have the heirloom options available commercially that they do now either. But I would go into the grocery store and I would see the very same things I was working my butt off to try to cultivate in my garden for so cheap. And I'd be like, this isn't good. I don't want to do this. But doing these things that create insurance against yourself, and really understanding and making allowance for the fact that this is going to be hard work. It is going to demand of you at some point, and putting things in place that are insurance against yourself, like little motivators and things that you're going to want to keep going for. It's smart. It's a smart way to garden, because I see some people who are just they're so industrious and they're such hard workers, but I have totally considered just quitting and buying my food at the store when this is hard. Now, not so much, now this has become my way of life, but that took some establishing, and in that establishing was a lot of insurance against myself. Wow, check out the stalk on this. These things are looking so good and healthy. The tomato plants in the high tunnel are they're pristine. They are absolutely gorgeous. They have no aphids. It's just silly how nice these plants are. The front plants are not like this. Look at there. I just did what I said I normally don't do, and suckered 2 beds of tomatoes that I don't have to do tomorrow. So take me less time tomorrow. I'm about to go inside, drink a bunch of water, maybe another cup of coffee. My camera's about to die. One more tip before I go. After you work on tomatoes, you're gonna have this yucky tar all over your fingers. The more tomatoes you work on, the more tar you're gonna have. You can scrub that for a really long time and it won't come off, but if you wash it with white vinegar, it'll be off in just a few seconds. Thank you guys for hanging out with me today. God bless you. Until next time.